And welcome back, students. Today we are going to focus on a couple of different features using the Layers panel to enhance our images. So to get started, I went ahead and created this very simple image, and you can go ahead and replicate it if you like, of just using some straight lines and of course filling with these two sectors here. I made a fill and a gradient. You can choose different colors if you want, but let's try to create something very simple like this just to get started. Now what I want to show first, of course, a quick recap of using our selection tools. So if we use the quick select tool, again that's the tool up here that kind of looks like a paintbrush with a little lasso, I can click on regions and I can select them. Now previously we had said if we want to deselect this, I can select like the marquee tool for example, click off, and it will do it. However, there is a way to do this a little faster and easier. If I select those regions, much how previously I had done a inverse of a selection, so select and then inverse, you can see there's also a deselect option or Control D. That will allow us to return those regions to their normal. Now, let's keep that in mind as we move forward into what we want to do today with layers. So with layers, we can see, of course, we have our layer 1 down here. And if I want to add another layer, remember, we can click on the Create New Layer button. However, maybe I want to make a copy of this image, because maybe I want to stagger it. So the easiest way to do that, I can, of course, come right here to Layer 1. I can right click and I can choose Duplicate Layer. And we can, of course, go ahead and copy that. And just for best practice, let's go ahead and rename these two layers just so that way we can keep them straight. So I'm just going to go with this one Original, and I'm going to call this one Copy. Now what I want to do is I want to move these images around. So I'm going to use the Move tool up here, which is the four-headed arrow. And I can go ahead now and drag those around. You can see how helpful that is moving that around. I can easily stagger these images. And another thing you might notice is that when I moved that new image that I made a copy of, it did not move the original image that I first had made. So it only moves whatever image is currently selected here in my Layers panel. So for example, I click back on the original in the Layers panel, and then I move that one, you can see that will only move the original. And just use Control Z to make sure that gets back in place. Now, what's if I wanted to make these so it's like a mirror of each other? Rather than redraw each image or having to make a whole new set of geometric lines, I can actually just use the transformation tools to go ahead and do so. Now, of course, I can use Control T and try to use the different handles here to rotate this or flip it into place where I want to go. However, if I go to Edit and Transform, and down at the bottom, you'll see some of our most handy common ones that we use. You see like rotate 80, rotate 190, rotate 90 counterclockwise, flip horizontal, flip vertical. So for example, if I click on flip horizontal, you can see that it flips it horizontally, and it has now moved that image exactly into the position that I may want it. Now I'm not yet quite done with it, because you notice that my handles here are looking like they want to do something with the image. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the Move tool, and you can see it has now placed the image to where I want to go. And now we have a nice mirrored image. Now let's say I wanted to say, hey, you know what, this looks great. I want to make sure that these two images are always moving together because I don't want to actually distort this. Maybe I want to put something in these other two regions. We can actually make it so these images are always treated together. Now we have seen how to group layers before, but there's also another thing called linking layers. So if I select both layers here, either by using Shift or Control, I can right click on these, and you can see we have an option right here in the middle that says Link Layers. So once I click on that, you'll see that we have two small chain links up here for the copy and the original layer. Now if I use the Move tool, and I move those images, you can see that they will act as one because they are linked. It doesn't, of course, change the fact that there are two layers, but it allows us to manipulate those layers individually. Now, there are times when we want to have those layers linked because we want to be able to do things like keep each layer separate from one another, but sometimes we want them to be treated as one whole image. Now, let's say that we didn't care about that. If we wanted to have these two images become one solid image. So, in that case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and right-click on the copy layer, and you can see we have a couple different options. We have Merge Down, Merge Visible, and Flatten. Now, Flatten is something that we're probably not going to use immediately right now, but the most common ones we're probably going to use are Merge Down and Merge Visible. And just to demonstrate this, I'm going to grab my blank layer that I had made here originally, and I'm just going to go ahead and pull that down to the bottom here. And let's just go ahead on that layer, go ahead and make a very simple gradient. Let's just choose something like nice red here that I have. All right, just so we have something to kind of show on that layer so we can see the difference. Okay. And we're going to go to our copy layer now, and I'm just going to right click, and I'm going to hit first merge down. And when I do that, you can see that it took the copy layer and merged it into the original layer. And just like that, I now have only 2 layers here. But if I want to see what merge visible does, let's do Control Z here to back that up. And I right click and I choose merge visible. You can see it takes that entire shape now, merges all those layers into a single layer. This can be really helpful if we have a large group of layers and we want to compress them down to a single layer. Hey, you know, we're done editing things. We want to put this together. We don't want to link it. We just want to make it one solid thing. We can do that merge visible to kind of take all those layers and compress them down to one solid image. All right, and that's going to wrap up what we have for today, folks. Again, a quick, easy one here. Go ahead and play around with this a little bit. Maybe you want to flip some different geometric patterns in here. Maybe you want to do some different gradients. But we'll see you on the next lesson.